Are you ready? Ready to bring a revolution to your relationships? Ready for the experiences on your dating adventure to evolve? Ready for more passion, intimacy, connection, and love in your relationship? Ready to heal past relationship wounds? You're in the right place. I'm Alan, the love engineer, and this is the Relationship Revolutions podcast. In this series, you'll get guidance and tips from me, interviews from other relationship experts, insights from couples who already have a great relationship, and other mind-opening conversations. G'day, and welcome to the latest episode of Relationship Revolutions, where this week I'm joined by a man who's got a lot to answer for, I could say. He's my good friend Peter Roper, and for those of you who are watching this on video, you see the book behind me on the top shelf in the middle. That's his book. It's called And Death Came Third, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later. Peter that first introduced me to the world of networking, and then followed on from that, having my own business and all sorts of things. So, and all of that has led to this podcast. So I'm very honoured to have Peter join me today. So first two questions, Peter. How are you and where are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually at home. So normally I'll be in the office doing this, but now I'm actually at home because I've got things to do. So I'm literally sitting in a bedroom and I managed to gear up enough light so you can see.
And home is somewhere in the middle of the UK, I believe, unless you moved.
Yeah, I live in a village in the middle of the heart of Worcestershire, not far from the Chelsea Walsh hill climb, for those people that know that. So yeah, we're in the middle of nowhere, pretty much 10, 12 miles from any small town, let alone anything larger. And we're very, very lucky. We're very blessed.
Excellent. So, one question I've always wondered. You call yourself the small businessman or a small business expert. Is that something you decided to do following a careers interview in school, or is there a journey behind it?
No. Well, usually I'm called the family businessman, but most people akin that to small business, which of course is another story because that's not true either. Some of the biggest businesses in the world are family businesses. I suppose my history is that when I left corporate, and by my, I was at a senior level, but I left because I'd had enough of the rubbish when I was 40. And I started running my own business and I was consulting in various ways. My elder daughter, Sarah Beth, who you know, and I started doing some stuff, working some stuff together, and we did all sorts of stuff. And there was a day, 15 years ago, something like that, where I said, I really need to, it's time I rebranded. I knew I needed to brand differently. And Sarah Beth is very good at sitting back and picking out what's necessary. And of course, it's part of what the family business is these days anyway, our own family business. And she said, why don't you put some ideas down? And then why don't we sit down on Friday afternoon and we'll talk it through? And I said, great idea. So I put some ideas down and the following Friday I looked at them, thought, yeah, these are pretty good, I think. And we sat together and she looked at it and said, it's not really good there, is it? Come on, when you think about it, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? You're right. I'll do some more stuff next week, next Friday. I'll have some stuff. So the following Friday, I had some stuff. And she looked at me and said, you ain't done anything, have you, Dad, really? This is exactly the same mash around the other way. I went, so you can't fool your daughters in a million years. I went, no, you're right. I was a bit rushed at the time. And I said, I promise I'll put my thinking cap on. I'll really do some proper stuff. So the following Friday, I really had put a thinking cap on. I really had thought some stuff through. And she looked at it and she said, well, I can't tell you actually what she said, but roughly it's rubbish. And so she's fed up. I'm fed up. We're both cross with each other. And then out of nowhere, she said, you're the family businessman. And I said something like, where the heck did that come from? I don't know, but that's actually what you do. You work with family businesses. We're family businesses. That's what you do. People think of you as the man that deals with family businesses. And we quickly checked about, web addresses and stuff like that. And nobody had been called a family businessman, and bingo. The family businessman was born, and within weeks, the website was done, all the rest of it. And so that became the branding, Peter Roper, the family businessman. And that's how it happened. So I suppose that's probably 15 years ago now.
Really?
So that's how it came about. Family businesses are not necessarily small businesses, though. They can be very large businesses and everything in between. 30% of the tax take of the Chancellor of Chequers, Chancellor of Exchequer, you know, takes from businesses or from family businesses in the UK. So, you know, we provide an awful lot of money, an awful lot of manpower and resource. As I said, some of the biggest businesses in the world are family businesses. So,
I love it. That then brings us to the question of how do you blend family and business? Because I hear so many people saying, don't work with family. Whereas if you're on your own and your family don't support you, that's very difficult.
no, it is tough. Oh, that's a long story. But let's think of it. Think of it as a high level first. Most businesses start the same way. They start by trying to put food on the table. You know, you've heard me say, about, one of my famous phrases is filling the fridge. And that's because most family businesses start by wanting to put food on the table or filling the fridge. Part of my history, which is at one point our fridge was very, very much empty. So you do what you've got to do to feed yourself and your family and etc. And quite quickly, normally, a family business becomes all consuming because you haven't got a job. So therefore, you've got to make it work. So therefore, you employ labour, and that labour is your other half. If you're lucky enough to have a partner, if you're very lucky you've got kids, you employ them, which is why. I can remember Sarah Beth, and she will tell you that story. That as an 8-year-old, she was in the days of CDs, Alan. Do you remember CDs? And she used to literally get the spindle, get the blank CD on, and put the sticker on all the rest of it. Now she was, 8, 10, 12, I don't know, something like that. And she gets some pocket money for it. But that's how family businesses work. And it doesn't matter, go and see any family business, you'll see it's all exactly the same.
Yeah.
It becomes just part of life. You see shopkeepers, it's part of life. You'll see the kids stacking shelves or whatever it is. But yes, that can cause challenges. Of course it can, because, the family are reliant on that revenue stream. And it doesn't matter how well they're doing. So, initially you're doing it, so you've got food on the table as it grows. That's great. But then other things come into play, and people's thought processes come into play, and it's very different. And every family business is different. There's a lot of common ground, but they're all unique, and they're unique because the family's unique, their value sets are unique. So the way they approach the business is very different. And it means that sometimes you've got harmony, and touch wood, I'm blessed to say that our family business is, but we all have our moments. So long as I know my place, I'm okay. No, I suppose, you know what I'm getting at. But it can be very awkward. Some people don't recognise the fact they're a family business. I've lost count when I've said to an audience, how many have you got your own business? People put their hands up, and I'll say, keep your hands up if you've got a family business. Quite a lot, the hands might drop, and I'll say, okay, I'll pick you as an example. Do you have a partner or a wife? Oh, yeah. But they're not in the business. Really? Okay, they don't do anything in the business then. Oh, well, they do the books. What? Hello? Even if they don't do any of that stuff, there's pillow talk.
Yeah.
There's talk over a kitchen table, over dinner, which is probably late. And that causes fun. I think fun in inverted commas. So, yeah, we're very different. We don't work like corporates. We don't work like public sector. It's not a criticism. It's just they work very differently to the way we work. The majority of family businesses are certainly under 10 employees, but probably under 5, because you get to situations where 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, etc. A lot of families in this country are under 5, and of course I'm not including self-employed, because when you look at the statistics, they're based on limited companies. They don't include the self-employed stats. And as you know, there's a hell of a lot of self-employed.
Possibly more.
So and again, governments, I don't want to get into politics, but they don't get what we're about.
No.
And when they talk about business, they're fed by the machine at the top end, the large organizations. They don't get, very rarely do they get small business. Very small, very rare.
Yeah.
Unless they come from there, if their families come from there, they won't understand it.
Yeah, definitely.
So yes, these problems can be challenging.
Yeah, because when I look at all the jobs that I've had, and you can sort of see the difference in attitude and mindset between those whose parents had their own business be it self-employed, be it a small business, or a business that's grown to a certain size, and those whose parents were employees. The attitude is completely different. And I think it was Brad Burton, the founder of 4N, that says starting your own business is great. You do it for freedom. You get to choose which 18 hours a day that you work.
That's right. That's it. And I switched from having a corporate life. I'd spent years working with family businesses, so providing them with stuff that they needed. So I was very used to working, talking to, spending time with family businesses. So when I started off on my own, I really thought I understood it. I really did. And it just shows how stupid I really am. Because very quickly you think, hang on a minute, I haven't got a secretary. I haven't got a corporate expense account. The car's mine. I have to fill it with my money for petrol, just like I did tonight. In fact, no, I didn't. I needed filling up. It's suddenly very different. The world is completely different, which is why I said very few people in government get it. And I thought I understood it. Once I started my own business, got into it, I realized, yes, I understood some of it. Unless you're running your own business, you won't get it really.
Yeah.
I don't believe you get it really.
Yeah, most definitely. I remember when I was an apprentice and they closed the workshop when I was 19, just come out of my time, and sort of see all these guys that have been there for 20, 30 years, all getting made redundant at the same time. And we all had options. We could go to another fleet, or we could go to main dealers or wherever else. One of the things that my workshop manager at the time says, well, what the company are doing, they're taking what we do and getting it done by the dealers for a so-say fixed price, apart from all the damage that gets charged at more money. And she said there's a key difference between this workshop they've just closed and the one they're starting to use. One is to keep trucks on the road, the other is to make money. And it's a completely different attitude. And lo and behold, about 5 years later, that company didn't exist anymore.
What a surprise. Well, it's always often the way, isn't it? Yet I see regularly family business of all kinds of sizes. Invariably, you'll see a family business that's started and grows. Perhaps it becomes a major business, but it's still family held. And which means the traditions, the value sets, the way it thinks is the same. And they sell out.
Yeah.
So they get to a point where the family say, you know what, I'm checking out. We're taking some dosh. We're off. And they sell it to, I don't know, a venture capitalist or something. VCs are only interested in one thing. They don't care about anything else, which is a return on the money within 3 to 5. That's it. You know, that's the training that they go through. So they inherit a workforce that's been used to working with people that are absolutely used to working in a family business, and it's very, very different.
Yes, there's very different cultures between the corporate and the family business, as you say. One thing I've found with my own, shall we say, entrepreneurial journey, when I started my mobile mechanics business back in 2006, 7, which was about the time that we met.
Yeah.
What I do now with the coaching, the biggest difference between the two is back then, the lady I was married to was not interested in me having my own business unless it was making lots of money. She wasn't supportive in any way, shape or form. Whereas my current partner, she's like, yeah, go do it. I can help support you now. Once it's achieved a certain point, then you can support me and I'll put my feet up in front of the fire, so to speak. That sounds fair. I've just got to make it work better.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. You know, if you, as you know, I'm very blessed. I'm married to my best friend. It's our 40th anniversary this year, and we're very lucky. And Annie has always supported what I do. When she ran her business, I supported her. You know, she's retired from her business 2 years ago now. It's very awkward if you have a partner that doesn't support you.
Yeah, very much so.
It really is, because they won't get it. They won't get the Brad Burton thing, 18 hours a day, etc. They won't get it. They'll say, "Well, are you finished now?" And again, you can have parents, grandparents who were always employed. They won't get it. They'll say, "Well, are you finished now? It's 5:30." No, you're kidding, aren't you? we've got a shed load of stuff to do, because if something's going to happen, it's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. It's not something you say, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." Now, I know there's some exceptions to that, and some people would say, "Well, you've not got the business running well enough, and you shouldn't have to do that." It's not reality.
Yeah, you've got to get
Not
to
from
that
where I'm
point
sitting.
where you can switch off at 5 o'clock and let somebody else do the work.
Yes, but the point that's utopia, Alan. And what happens is, if you become successful, whatever your version of success is, which is usually monetary or whatever, all that happens is you end up inheriting a whole bunch of new stuff that you've got to sort
Yeah.
out. So you're still doing it. You semi-retire. Allegedly, I'm 68 years old. Allegedly, I was supposed to have retired, but I haven't. About working as much now as ever. I might work a little more cleverly because I kind of have to, but no, you just inherit a new set of challenges. You get a bigger business. If you run, 5 employees, you get a set of 5 employee type challenges. If you've got 10, we've got 10 employee challenges and 20 and 50 and 100, 500,000, etc. The challenges become new, but they're still a load of challenges.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, you're still putting all that time and effort in.
Absolutely.
So it's not simple. It's not simple.
So after you've been married for all of these years, what would you say some of the secrets are to a long-lasting, happy, fulfilling relationship?
You should ask Annie that, not me. And I'll give you a very male answer, and then the reality is what Annie would tell you, isn't it? Let's face it, she's the one that has to put up with me.
Well, there'll be
And the kids have
truth
to
in
put up
both
with me.
answers.
Best friend is the first one, but we're best friends. Now, that doesn't mean we always get on, but we're best friends. So, we became best friends before we got together. So we're best friends, and I think that's a big deal. Tolerance, I guess, especially with me. But you've got to be tolerant, I think. And you accept the fact that you're not perfect, and your partner's not perfect. But, to me, I think, in fact, I might be wrong, but either the Queen or Prince Philip actually said tolerance a few years back. And I mean, who wants to argue with that?
Yeah.
Anybody argue with the Queen? No, I don't think so. Yeah, I would say that. If you're not best friends in the first place, I think it's going to be a challenge. Both of us the second time round. So, I got married 7 days before my 21st birthday and got divorced 10 days before my 24th birthday. And it was a mistake. Just simple. It was a mistake.
What, the marriage or the divorce?
No, the marriage. Well, the divorce is good news on both sides. But if that hadn't happened, Annie and I would never have got together.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing. That without going into the stories of that, because there's no point. If that hadn't happened, Annie and I wouldn't have got together. So, it's the old thing, isn't it? You go through stuff and say, I could do without this, but it's actually what you learn from it sets you up for something else later.
Yeah.
And so both of us know being in the wrong place. We both know about being in the right place. So I think that probably helped. But as I said, we're best friends. So, with when a lot of people struggled in COVID, well, we didn't. Because, to be fair, Annie was very poorly for a while because she got Delta, so she was not good for a while. But it wasn't an issue because we just enjoy each other's company nearly all the time. I think that sometimes Annie just wants me to go off somewhere. If it was a racing circuit somewhere and I had a car of some sort, then that's what I would actually do. But I'm a legend in my own memory as far as that's concerned. But yeah, being friends, actually, you've got to be best friends, and you've got to be tolerant. I think, to me, that's the key. Otherwise, it's going to be a struggle.
Yes, I think a lot of people who go through a first marriage and then get divorced, some of them actually learn a lot from it. I know I certainly did. And you learn what mistakes not to make the second time round if you choose to get married again. So far, I've not made those mistakes again. I've made other mistakes instead.
And of course you have.
Yeah. And I think having disconnections and things you don't agree on is par for the course. Whereas these days, so many people get to that point and think, oh, they must have fallen out of love with me, or it's not working, instead of getting the heads down together to come up with a solution.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you agreed on everything, then there's no point two of you. You might as well only be one of you.
It would be boring as well.
It'd be very boring. So Annie and I are similar in some ways and very different in other ways, and that's the beauty of that, really. So do we agree on everything? And there are certain things that I definitely have strong opinions about that Annie would disagree about, and vice versa. We 80-20, we agree.
Yeah.
And with the kids, as the kids grew up, I mean, our kids are now. Well, our son's 46 in November. That's hilarious. And the girls are 41 and 39 from memory. We agreed on most things with the kids as they grew up. We didn't agree with everything. I mean, sometimes I had a male viewpoint and then he had a female viewpoint, and we came together with it from time to time. But in the main, we were very solid about what we thought the kids would be, etc. And everybody tells us we've got 3 great kids. We don't need them to tell us that because we know we have.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to have that. But you need to agree on a lot of it.
Yeah.
But not everything. It'd be wrong. It'd be boring. It just, why bother then? That's the whole thing. It's just like with the kids. Do the kids agree with everything we say? Of course they don't. The kids, they're not going to. No chance. I mean, it is hilarious when one of them will come up and say, "Do you know what?" Particularly to the mom, of course, which it was. Yeah, that's a really good. I didn't understand a few years ago, but now I do. That's always worried. That's hilarious, But every parent understands that.
Yeah.
As they see the kids, and they see it in their grandkids. We've got 6 grandkids. And we see in them what their parents were like, obviously, as all grandparents do. And it's always hilarious. It's always it's great. A son when we with them a couple of years back, and our grandson, his son, was running around doing some stuff perhaps he wouldn't be doing, and our son looked at me and said, "Was I like that?" And I said, "Of course you were." And he said, "How did you handle that?" And I just laughed and I said, "It's over to you. That's up to you." And I then said, "By the way, Chris, it's called payback."
Yeah, I think I started to understand my parents a lot more, and certainly have more respect for them once I had kids of my own. It brings a whole new mindset.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I mean, my parents had a very old school relationship. They were married in the Blitz in Brum in 1940s, and I had a dad that was very quiet, and my mum was predominantly ill for all the life that I knew her, and she got to 99. She got to 100th year actually. She partly went through the middle of COVID. So their viewpoint of life was quite different to mine. And then as you grew older, you thought, "Oh, now I can see why they said that." Blimey. And of course, the classic, especially with our daughters, would say, "I swore I'd never say that, but Mum was right." And all that sort of stuff. And it's true.
Yeah.
Because every relationships, it's not just between you two. When you've got kids, when you've got kids, you've got relationships with kids.
Yeah.
And they're very different. They're very, very different. And, my hands up, I didn't always get it right. I don't always get it right. I know I don't. Because they tell me I don't.
I don't think anybody does, really.
No, but the thing is, if your values are in the right place, you're halfway home, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's half of the battle, and so many people these days don't even know what their own values are, let alone the partners.
No, and I work with family business. Well, the first thing I do with family business is talk about values. Quite often I'll say, "Well, hang on a minute, we want to get more business," and I'll say, "Do you want more business?" Then, yes. Well, we didn't talk about values. And I've got a simple process to take people through value sets, and it's eye-opening so often where you will talk with parents who'll say, "Well, of course our kids will be exactly the same," and you'll find out they're not.
Nah.
And I'm not talking about personality profiling or that sort of stuff, because that's a little thing. Value sets very much appear during your, as you know, through your childhood and through to your teenage, and then into your 20s, etc. And they're probably pretty set by then, unless something changes you. And you can change values if you want. I mean, quite often it takes time to really understand it. It took me years to really get it. And my three core values, I tell everybody, a family. Well, if it wasn't, that wouldn't be very good as a family business plan, would it? But it actually is. Fun, and by fun, I like people that smile. I like doing things with a smile. I don't like people who are half empty and moan and groan. They're not my sort of people. But the one that took me years to understand, by years, I mean decades, was fairness. And that's actually why I left corporate even then, which is 28 years ago. I hadn't realised that actually it was fairness that was actually bugging me most. You can have a list, I've got a list of over 200 values that you can look at and people will assimilate with the words, but fairness was really important to me. I realised that the corporate ladder just isn't fair. It's not fair at all. And the higher you get at it, the less fair it is. It's very one way. I was at director level. I just realised it was wrong. So when you get into relationships, in family businesses, the assumption can be very easily from parents that their children will have the same value sets. They might be, linked with some of them, but quite often, in fact, very often, the values in their children, particularly once they've grown up and particularly perhaps once they've flown the nest, are going to be different. And you have to recognise that and actually realise it's a strength. It is an absolute strength. As long as you recognise it. If you don't recognise it, then it can be a real issue, a real issue. And I've seen some very unfortunate things with family businesses where families have been destroyed because one of the people involved, one of the siblings, for instance, their value set was money. Money was the root of all things, that, as far as they were concerned, and that was anathema to their parents. Although they'd done well with the business, that wasn't what drove them. So it caused all sorts of terrible, complete, awful breakdown in the family. The business was not good, but what was far more important was family relationships, and they disintegrated because they didn't understand the core process. Well, the core process is we're all driven by values. Because we've got our own way of delivering our personality, disc or whatever, but it's a way that we talk, to the world. But values has been everything.
Yes, I think when people talk about values, a lot of people give some surface level stuff like, I value honesty and integrity and all this stuff. Well, surely that should be a given for most people. And if you've got to tell people that honesty and integrity are my top values, well, why are you telling me that? That makes me question whether you can be trusted or not. Are you really honest for the fact you need to tell me that? And I think people's actions...
we can take honesty. I'll take honesty. I'll remind people, honesty is a two-way street. It's about being honest, but being honest with yourself is an even bigger deal. And it's the tough one. You know that because of what you do. Being honest with yourself is really tough. And sometimes we don't want to face up to it, do we? So honesty, again, honesty immediately. Somebody says honesty, you'll go, great, okay. It's a two-way street, isn't it? And you all see people go, yes, nah.
Yeah, because
it's Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. Because you say, these are my values, but your actions and behaviours tell a very, very different story.
Yeah.
And if they don't line up, you're not going to feel comfortable within yourself ever, let alone in a relationship with anyone else. So what are some high-level things that people can do to get more clarity on their own values?
Well, I think the danger with values is very, obviously, as you know, it's very deep.
It is.
And so if you walk in, I don't know, into a corporate situation, and which I've done, sit down and say, right, next 30 minutes we're going to talk about values, and say, okay, write down what are your values. It doesn't work at all. It's not going to, because people just put the shutters up. Because values can be very deep. You've got to be careful. And I've worked with some businesses where they've immediately, I've got the message across, say, to the high-end part of the business. They said, right, we're going to go do this now. We'll copy what you've done, go do it ourselves. And I said, well, you're very welcome to, but you have to be ever so careful. And the reason why is because most people aren't asked, when was the last time somebody asked you about your values? I wanted to believe that so many times, I'm saying, so when was the last time you were asked? Never.
Generally, when I hire a coach,
Yes, that's right.
that's
Yeah,
about
true.
the only time.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. So you rattle on in there, you've got to be very careful. And I've made mistakes in the early days of that when I realized I needed to do things in a different way. So the way I do it is that, as I said, you can go on the internet and you'll see, you can get a list of hundreds of value words. And what I actually do is sit with people and say, okay, so just circle the ones that make sense to you. You're probably going to ring, some people will ring about a dozen, some will ring about 25, 30. I did one a few months back, I think the lady in question was a solicitor, did about 60. That's great, it's fine. If they float your boat, that's great. Now what I want you to do is knock it down. So I want you to knock it down to 6. And then people start to think about it more. And then when we get down to that sort of level, then, if I'm going, if I had a family business together, I'd say, well, what do you mean by this word? What does this word mean to you? And then you work your way through that. And then, if you've got a group of people together, you can say, well, that means that to you. What does it mean to you over there? All of a sudden, they'll say 2 different things, and everyone starts going, oh, blimey. And then the best thing you can do is shut up and let everybody talk to each other.
Yeah.
And have a conversation about it and get to understand it. And if you spend enough time with it, you can then say, okay, so seriously, I'll share with you family, fun and fairness. It took me years to understand that, as I said. No secret. By the way, there's a whole load of words here that are important to me. Undoubtedly, they're important to me. But these 3 float my boat. These are the ones that if you cross these 3, you'll know about it. One way or the other, you will know you're crossing those 3. If you cross something to do with my family, if you're crossing fairness, or frankly, you're not being fun, my definition of fun, as I said, you'll know about it. Now, it might be simple that I might just exit. I might not actually open my mouth about it, but I might exit it and say this relationship's not for me, or what have you. When I've worked with clients in the past, I've asked them about it, and they've said the number one value is money. I'm not going to work with you. And the reason why is because that's not a driver for me. You need to work with somebody who's driven by money, because the 2 of you are going to get on like a house on fire. That's the thing you want to be working on. When it's a family business and you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, multi-generations, you go through that process. And by the end of that process, you can see that different people are floating different minds. So the clever thing then is to recognize it and understand that when you're talking with each other, those are the ones that are going to be good for them. You don't have to change. You just recognize they're the ones that float them. My language, but you know what.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the biggest deal with family businesses. It really is the biggest deal. You see good family businesses are driven with a core set of values that run through the business. There's a reason why family businesses are better at retaining them and their staff. Generally, there's various studies that will say that staff in family businesses stay longer, are paid less, and work more. Now, why would you do that?
Generally, because you're
There's gotta be
treated
a
better.
reason. Yeah. So, in other words, the value sets are pretty aligned. They're not, they're pretty aligned. I've worked for a family business when I was 21 for about 18 months, 2 years. And their value sets were horrendous. And that came from a father who was geared purely to money, set his 2 sons against each other to compete against each other to see who would take the business over. And it was horrible. Truly horrible. The divorce rate in that business was huge, way above national average. It was only a few years later I realised it taught me a lot of lessons. At the time, it wasn't particularly nice, but I learned a lot from it. And yet there are others, you go into a family business and they're really a pleasure to be a part of, because the value sets are relatively aligned, or they recognise the differences in the people and they get the maximum out of it. And then life's better, and that's what people really want, isn't it? They want a better life is not just about money, is it? It's about having, a better viewpoint on things.
Yeah, I think the money thing, for the most part, all it does is brings you better choices or more options. It's what you can do with that money that can be the driver. But if the money alone is a driver, I think that brings in challenges, whether it's a family business, a bigger business, or an intimate relationship or a parental relationship. When it comes down to money, ultimately, that old saying out of that rather well-known book, the love of money is the root of all evil, comes into play quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a phrase I learned many years ago, which is, I don't love money, but I raise it with oxygen, and there is truth to that. There is truth to that. When we were having a very bad time and our fridge was completely empty back in 2007, you know what? Money was something that we needed, no question. As a family, are we flying? Do we have gazillions? No, we don't. But we're happier because we're working where we want to work, and the bills are paid, and there's food in the fridge. It's all right. There are many people that haven't got that chance. So being grateful is grateful with a degree of humbleness, I suppose, is important. But for some people, that's not what they want. They don't want it at all. Who was I reading about? Was it yesterday? It was, wasn't it? I can't remember who it was. Somebody very well known had gotten to realise that all the trappings and everything around them, and they got considerable stuff, they realised it meant nothing. That actually what they needed was happiness. What people want is to be happy, whatever their definition of happy is, because it's different for different people. That's really what people want.
Yeah. And
family businesses, the same thing.
I think it was Jim Carrey that said everyone should have the opportunity to be rich and famous, just to learn that it doesn't solve all your problems.
That's right. And it was Matthew Perry that was quoting him. There was an article on Matthew Perry, and it went back to when Matthew Perry was quoting Jim Carrey. That's it. Well, yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's true. It's true. We lost a lot in 2007. 2006, I was flying. 2007, we lost a lot. So the fancy car, the fancy house, and everything went with it, disappeared, and we rented a tub-to-down semi-cottage, and I had a 10-year-old Astra, which I nicknamed Rocky. And we started again, basically. And that was all down to mistakes I'd made. Nobody else's, though, my mistakes. And yes, I learned a lot from it. But one of the things I learned was we didn't need all that, actually, to be happy. What was brought down to me was what was the thing that was most important to me. Well, that's my relationship with Annie and my family.
Yeah.
Number one. And to be fair, it always had been, but I'd gotten where I was doing lots of different business stuff, chasing the money, forgetting the fact that that's not, the people who know me well know I'm not driven by money. I never have been driven. I've been driven by providing for my family, and that meant going and getting the cash to make sure the family was all right. Definitely, especially in the 80s when I was going through sales and stuff, and I became successful at that. But it was the family. That's why it wasn't the ego for me. It was, we could do more stuff, But that was in a world where a lot of those people didn't even have families, or they were divorced.
Yeah.
There were salespeople that, got divorced regularly, or they had affairs and everything else, because they're in high pressure, high volume environments. And there was me, very unusual, had a young family, and I was being driven by something completely different to that, which was go get the money to feed the kids, so that Annie can look up, and most of them just didn't get it. I didn't get why I was driven that way.
Interesting. So, for anyone who's listening to this, how can they find you? Whether they're a family business, a small business, or they just think you're an awesome fun chap and they want to learn more.
Oh, bless you. Well, peteroper.com is the easiest, and you can get me from there. So just, peteroper.com will find me. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me that way, but not at peteroper.com. Oh, of course, they can ask you, Alan, and you can steer it to me.
Well, they can join the Professional Speakers Association if they so desire.
Of course they can. Of course they can, yes. I have a funny feeling, aren't I speaking there in a few days' time?
Could that be the first Monday in September?
Yeah, funny enough.
Enough I need to be there.
So I'm looking forward.
I promise
I'm
not
looking
to
forward
heckle
to it.
too much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's all right. It won't be the first time. I could share you the story of the ultimate heckle. I might have done that. Actually,
I
I'm not
don't
sure.
think so.
But no, well, I wouldn't repeat it on here, but I will let you know what it is. The ultimate heckle was eye-opening. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Also, for people who are interested in public speaking, that their book behind me called "And Death Came Third" comes from a survey that was done way back a long time ago that found that most people's fears are not necessarily spiders or snakes, although they were pretty high. Walking into a room full of strangers, public speaking, and death was third.
Bonkers, isn't it? We'd
It
rather
is.
leap into the pit of snakes and spiders and die.
Most of the time, yes. But I think back to when we first met. Yeah, I was scared to walk into a room full of strangers and public speaking and death. But I'm not sure whether I still want to jump into that pit of snakes first. I think I'd rather speak, but it would be a very close call.
So
So do I.
I'm Indiana Jones. I hate snakes. Yeah, and it's a very real fear. Speaking in a group of people, it is a very real fear. As you know, I've helped lots of people to get past that, and the simple ways of doing that is to understand what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. And I love seeing it when people switch on and they get it, and they go, "I'm all right now," and then they get a bit of a bug and say, "Oh, I want to speak more," and I love all that because it's not something that comes naturally for most people. And if you can stand up and speak for yourself, it doesn't hold you back. In that case, you can do things accordingly. You don't have to be a nutter like us going to the BSA and speaking with other groups of people and get paid for it and all the rest of it. It's a very different marketplace that. But just learning about it, just be able to stand up in front of a group of people and get a message across, which might just be as simple as a wedding speech or a presentation in your job. Makes a big difference. It's nice to see the confidence level go up.
Yes, I do. Did use some of those very early basic tips I learnt from you. Well, wasn't my my wedding speech because I was already married by that time, but certainly used them a few times since, and they do make a difference. And I've taught them to my kids as well, and they do work.
So if a lot of it's got this common sense. Oh, for me, I've had experience because I've been speaking for 27 years now, something like that, professionally. So, give or take a year.
I'm guessing it's autopilot for you now.
No, and that's not true. The biggest thing for me, Alan, was learning to be myself, and that's why I like to help teach people. And if they want me to help teach them, is that you've got everything you need. You are you. And the biggest thing you have is to stop trying to be somebody else. In the early days of joining the PSA, there was a particular speaker who I thought was really good and is very good, a guy called Robin C. And I loved the way he delivered stuff. And I thought, I could be like Robin, I started to try. Well, for a start, he's Scottish. So, and I've got a Brummie accent, so that ain't going to work. And then I realised that his practice delivery was incredibly practiced, and he was comfortable in himself because it was incredibly practiced and very, very structured. Great, lovely guy, very good at what he does. And I realised I couldn't be like that, and that what I needed to be, to quote this phrase, instead of being a second-class version of somebody else, was to be a first-class version of me. So, and the biggest thing I learned was to be a natural presenter. The good news is that's being yourself. So, the thing I learned was a way to speak that I was comfortable with, and the biggest compliment I've ever had. And I've had a number of times over the years, but the first time I got it was the one that hit home for me, which was, the thing about Peter is he's exactly the same on stage as off stage. And as soon as I got that, and I knew that was me then, so that, not everybody will like what I do or how I do it, and then you have to get past that. But I knew I could be myself and speak in a certain way, which was comfortable for me. And so what that means is that when I do a speech, yes, I will be. I'll be. Everybody. If you don't get some nerves before you speak, there's something badly wrong. You should be nervous, but nervous excited. That's how I'd put it. But you do have to put the work in. You do have to put the effort in. Just because I've been doing it for a long time, you still have to put the work in. I've thought through what it is I want to cover in a few days' time for PSA, which will be a one-off. It is a one-off. It's not a keynote or anything. It's very much just a one-off that I've been asked to do. So I need to think about that, and it's not going to be a polished, rehearsed thing that I've delivered on time. So, and when you see people speaking at the PSA, you see that they struggle more because quite often they're not being asked to deliver what they're used to speaking about, and so they have to work harder at it. I'm comfortable in myself, yes, definitely. But I ought to be. I'm 68 now. If I can't be comfortable now, I never will be, will I? Really, So
Yeah.
it's all about the fun.
Yeah, talking about being yourself, that reminds me of one of the early lessons I give to nearly all of my clients, which ultimately everything I do fits down into 3 things: know yourself, be yourself, and stay true to yourself. And then you won't go far wrong.
Yeah. No, and that fits beautifully from speaking and presenting, but presenting, standing up in front of more than one person, if you like. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. Yeah, and if you get on the speaking trail, you decide you want to be a speaker or whatever variant of that is. The biggest thing is getting comfortable in your own skin, accept the fact that not everybody is going to like you, and that's life. And there's always going to be somebody that will come and say, "Do you want some constructive criticism?" And I'll say no, thanks. In the early days, I was stupid enough to listen, but I don't now because then we're never gonna link. So there's no point, I am what I am, and exactly the 3 things you said are bang on. But obviously they're bang on for life, full stop, aren't they?
Absolutely. So, final question,
Yeah.
and I ask everybody this question, and they don't get any warning. It's not prepped. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just whatever you feel is the answer today. And that question is
Right.
this: as this podcast is called Relationship Revolutions, what is one thing that would bring a revolution to the world of relationships and dating?
This will be a funny answer because I assume at some point Annie will listen to this. I think the revolution is the thing that I'm often told I need to do more of, which is listen.
Absolutely.
My personality style is that if I'm not careful, I don't listen. And I have a mechanism to switch it on, which I learned some years ago. As I've gotten older, I have to remember it more in some ways. And I literally have to switch on listening. Because if not, I go off into Peter world. I'm off there, everything. Yeah, if you say, I don't know, any form of racing car, I'm gone. So, if you say Ferrari, I'm away. So, up in the boonies somewhere. But if we could all listen more, and Ali will laugh right off at that because, she'll just look at me and go, is that what you said? But I think it's true. I think if we all listen to get more, life would be a bit easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yes, that old saying, we have two ears, one mouth, they should be used in proportion.
Yeah, my dad used to say that to me a lot. That's why I said it's pot calling kettle black, but I am much better than I used to be. I know that. I also know that I do have to switch it on. I have to switch it on because it's not so natural for me. So when I do, it's all right. But if I don't, there's a story, another story with that, I suppose. But I literally, quite often, the family will say, "I told you that," and I said, "Were you looking into my eyes, and was I looking into your eyes? And did I say I'm listening?" And if they say no, I say, "Well, what chance had you got then?" But if I say I'm in, I'm listening, then I am. But I have to switch it on. So maybe more of us need to do that.
I'll have to remember that next time we have a conversation.
Yes, I can't guarantee I am. It's not it's not personal. I'm just often. But this is the thing when you're speaking, you've got to accept that's something that took a while for me to get used to, especially when mobile phones really kicked in and people are actually using them to put to put stuff on, but they're just as likely to be playing a game as well. You've got to get past it. You've got to accept the fact that every 8 seconds somebody is likely to switch into a different place. So every 8 seconds, the chances are, and I've got the attention span of a gnat. So if you say something that takes me off, I might be off for 2 or 3 minutes. Meanwhile, the speaker's still going. It's not their fault. It's just natural for you to do it. And so your job is to try and bring them back into you. And you have to accept the fact that on an 80-20 basis is probably the best you'll ever get. When people say the audience was rapt and they'd listened to every word, I'd love to think it was true, but it's not. It's not. It can't be. Somebody will be off thinking, did I turn the gas off, or something. It's life. So, answer your question. Listen more.
Love it. Peter, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you again. Well, probably be at the PSA.
Al, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope whatever I've said has been useful to somebody, as best of my meanderings. But thanks so much indeed.
No worries.
Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave me a review on your preferred podcast platform. Click the like button and also subscribe so that you get the new episode notifications. I'm curious, what did you take away from this episode? Please share your takeaways with me. Send me an email to relationship-revolutions@theloveengineer.rocks.